All right, in this section, I'm going to continue the discussion on consent and assent, and I know that Joe has previously talked about this issue. As I talked about assent and consent, you should know what's on the task list, both for the 2.0 and in the current content outline. Now, assent and consent is a major topic today that's found from behavior analysts in conference and in social media and just general discussions. And the first thing I want to say is that this is not a new concept. Assent and consent have always been a hallmark of quality ABA. It's always been a hallmark of the progressive method and the autism partnership method. In that, we've been taking consent from our consumers, our learners, for years, as well as assent. It's not a new procedure. As we talk about it, there is a difference between assent and consent, and I would like to highlight some of these differences. I know Joe gave you a bunch of definitions that could be found from various sources. Here's the one from the BACB. Assent is vocal or non-vocal verbal behavior that can be taken to indicate willingness to participate in research or behavioral services by individuals who cannot provide informed consent because of their age or intellectual impairment. Assent may be required by a research review committee or service organization. In such instances, those entities will provide parameters for assessing assent. So from this, I want to be very clear. The BACB, from my interpretation, is saying that assent's important, and there's no doubt that it's important. It's absolutely important. But they're not giving you the parameters of when to take assent or when not to take assent. That's really based upon your agency that you'll be working with as an RBT. The other thing that's important here is that you should be looking at both verbal behavior and nonverbal behavior. So if the client is saying, I don't want to do this anymore, they might be withdrawing assent. Or if the client's saying, yeah, I really want to do this activity, then they are engaging in assent. But it's just not their verbal behavior. Remember, if you go back to that clinical judgment and looking at nonverbal behavior is also important here in determining if a client is assessing in or assessing out, withdrawing. Now, another important component of this definition is when is assent taken or given. Assent is for those individuals who cannot provide legal consent. So in most states in the United States of America, it's 18 years or under, you have to get assent from your client, not consent. Also, individuals with intellectual impairments or who don't understand what they're consenting in or out to might also have to get assent. So that's one of the big differences, is that age. Now, along with assent is the concept of consent. And what you really want to do is obtain informed consent. And informed consent, here you can read the definition of the BACB. I'm not going to read this one to you like I did with the assent piece, but it is that you are letting the consumer know what the procedures are, what the risks are, what the benefits are, the time for it. And this is both in research practice and in clinical practice. So you should be getting consent both in research practice and in clinical practice. Now, with informed consent, you want to take that at the start of intervention. So a lot of you will be going in the intervention field. Some might go in research, but a lot will be in the intervention field. Meaning before you even do the first kind of assessments that Julia and myself will be talking about later in this training, you want to make sure that the clients or the client's caregivers know what the procedures are, know the time commitments, know the benefits, the reasons why, and know the risks involved. Also, when you obtain consent, you need to make sure that it is in language that the person understands, both in terms of it's English or Spanish or French or Japanese speaking. You need to have it written in their language and at a level that they're understanding what they're consenting from. Now, once again, to me, the key difference here is that consent are for adults, assent are for more minors or people who don't understand what they're consenting to. And this is a big difference because a minor, 4 or 5-year-old, cannot consent to a procedure. They cannot consent long-term because they just don't understand the long-term ramifications of what the intervention is or the outcomes of the intervention. Now, as I said, assent and consent are picking up more steam as they should be discussed within the field of applied behavior analysis. And there are those who you will see in the field, a lot on social media, but more now creeping into conferences and even in publications, talking about the history of behavioral intervention violating assent. So a lot of people are saying that we're ignoring the client's rights and that they're assenting out of procedures and we're not letting them assent out, that we're creating compliance and that compliance is our goal of ABA, or that we're doing hand-over-hand prompting, so full physical prompting, and that our clients are not assenting to it. And I'm not going to go into what full physical prompting is here. I will talk about it at a later portion of time. Or that they are not assenting to the goals and what is non-distinguishable or assimilation, what they call non-distinguishable assimilation, which goes back to the Lovas 87 study, so that they're not assenting to what they're being taught. And what we know from historically, and what a hallmark I believe in our field is social validity. It was talked about in the Wolf 78 paper, and it's something that quality practitioners have been doing for a long time. And with that, that means that we are listening to our clients from the onset of intervention, before intervention really, during intervention, and after intervention, both on the procedures that we're implementing as well as the goals that we're teaching them. So we should always be, looking for what our clients are wanting. And in terms of procedures, as I talked about in an earlier module, we should be using our clinical judgment to make changes of what is in the best interest of the child in the moment. So if you're seeing a child's not happy in a moment, or you're doing something wrong, or the child doesn't want to be there, it's your job as a practitioner really to make those changes and go into a more positive kind of intervention. Now, that really should highlight the importance of assent. But I do think that not all the time we're going to gain assent. Not all the time that we have to have our clients agree with the intervention. So I'm going to show you a video. Once again, here's the disclaimer of the video. I'm going to show you a video that highlights this.
Alex, it's time for school.
No, I want to play video games.
Buddy, we have to go to school.
I want to play video games all day long.
So that's my son Alex, and this is a common occurrence, or was a common occurrence in the second grade, of him not wanting to go to school and him just wanting to be on the iPad and play either Minecraft or watch The Simpsons. If it was him, he would do that really all day long. And I've seen him on times when we've had like a lazy Sunday, he just play those games as long as he can stay up. Now, that means he's withdrawing assent from school. Well, should, in this case, a 7, 8-year-old really have that decision to withdraw from school? Does he know the long-term consequences of not going to school? Does he understand the benefits of going to school? Can he make that decision? And it's my contention that no, children are not able to make those decisions all day long. I'll give another example that I saw from a client, an individual with autism. It was during school, they let assent withdrawal occur. And so what would happen is the child would go into school. She would say, "Can I have it my way? Can I go take a break?" She'd walk around the school until recess. She would go to her paraprofessional, her RBT, and say, "Okay, I'm ready to come back now." Bell would ring for recess. She would go play. Recess would be over. She would say, "Can I go have a break?" She would walk around until lunch, do the same thing, ask if she can come back, eat lunch with her friends, go play. Lunch will be over, ask if she could have a break, and walk around until the end of the day. And when I went there, I was thinking to myself, why is this occurring? And I asked them, they said, well, we have to honor her with assent withdrawal. And to me, I was like, no, that's not a time you have to honor her, because she's not making decisions in her best interest. We are not making sure that we're not doing harm by having her withdraw from school. Our colleague Andy Bondi also used another example of one of his grandkids and how they want to ride a motorcycle at a young age. And of course, that's something they want to do, but it's not safe for them to do. So we should never honor that. Or if they say, no homework, like they want to do homework and that's their choice not to do homework, children don't have those rights either to say, I'm assenting out from the school requirements. And ultimately, I see too many behavior analysts just saying, well, children will make the good choices. 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, regardless of diagnosis, will make the good choices. And for me, that's not always the case. It's not always the case that the child will make a good choice, both for their short-term benefit and for their long-term benefit. And so assent really is a tricky kind of thing. So you might be asking, what do you do? How do you proceed? Well, here's some ways that we can proceed. One, I think you absolutely have to get consent. And it's really not you as the RBT that has to get consent. It's your BCBA that has to get consent. So before you start an intervention, before you do assessment, really ask that BCBA, hey, has consent been given by the caregivers? Second, I really think we have to look at assent as an ongoing process. I think assent is critical. I think it's critical in a quality program. And so for us, you have to not just take assent at the beginning of the session, but you should be looking at assent throughout your session. Be looking at those non-vocal verbal behaviors, looking at the vocal verbal behaviors, looking at the environment, seeing if your child's approaching or not approaching, and really looking to see if they're wanting to be there or not wanting to be there. If they're not wanting to be there, really switching the procedures that you're doing. The big one, which is really more for BCBAs, not you as the RBT, is parent versus child wishes. If the child wishes not to do a procedure and a parent wishes to do a procedure, it's kind of a tricky situation. And the reality, whether people want to hear it or not, and whether it's controversial or not, is that parents are the holder of rights for their child. That's regardless of a diagnosis. If a parent wants them to be in early intensive intervention and the child doesn't, it's the parent's right there. They are the ones that are protecting their child for the long term. Along with that, we really need to know the boundaries of assent. And there are times that we would not honor assent, as I said, when a kid doesn't want to go to school. However, there's times we would absolutely honor assent withdrawal. And this might be when they don't want to do a certain activity, a certain lesson, or they don't find a goal as socially appropriate as others. Then there's times that you might say, okay, we don't have to work on this today. Go back to your BCBA, tell them that the child's withdrawing assent for this procedure or this curriculum, and work on ways to get that more inviting, that they'll be more likely to participate in the future. At the end of the day, I always think that what we have to do, whether you're an RBT or whether you are a BCBA, is look out for the best interests of the client. And this goes back to understanding little picture and big picture. We have to make sure that from our perspective that we are teaching skills that are important in the short term that will benefit the client, as well as the long term. What's something that's going to make sure that they reach their fullest potential, that they will have lives that are happy, joyful, full of love, and that they are doing what they want to do. So when you're making the decisions of honoring assent withdrawal or having assent or including assent, really you should be looking at what's in the best interest of the client. And these are talks that you can have ongoing with your supervisor, with the caregivers, and with the clients themselves. And finally, we need to make learning fun. I think a lot of times why kids withdraw from interventions or withdraw from curriculum is it's just not fun. It's boring. Maybe we're teaching in a very robotic way. And as we get into the teaching procedures like discrete trial teaching, unfortunately, we see it a lot of times being implemented in a boring way. Instructions are repeating itself. They continue with the task even after someone has mastered it. This is just going to lead to the child not wanting to be there. Or sometimes I see that procedures are too punitive. We're not providing enough reinforcers to the kids, and so we need to get a more dense schedule of reinforcement. Or sometimes the materials are boring and what the concepts we're teaching are boring. I know Joe was making fun of himself for some of the concepts early on when he's going to terminology that you might have found boring, and that makes this whole process not as fun compared to like learning about social skills groups or learning how to implement behavioral skills training. So at the end of the day, if we can make learning fun, I believe that kids will not withdraw from assent as much. They're more likely to be in the activity, and therefore they're going to grow. So at the end of the day, assent and consent are different. Consent are for those who can legally provide it, have an age, adult age, whereas assent are more for minors or who cannot provide legal consent. They're both extremely important. They should happen at the onset. Consent is an ongoing process. Assent is an ongoing process. But there's more boundaries when it comes to assent than there are consent based upon the environment, what they're assenting or assent withdrawing to, and what's in the best interest of their child. I know this is a controversial kind of topic, and so I really suggest that for all RBTs, they dive into it and have these discussions, which sometimes are painful, but are meaningful to help clients grow.